Mia sat on the plush couch in her living room, the soft glow of the chandelier overhead casting a warm light on the sleek, modern furnishings. The walls were adorned with tasteful art pieces, each one more expensive than the last. On the surface, Mia's life looked perfect. Her husband, Sang-Jun, stood at the center of the high-powered world, a man of influence and wealth. She had it all: luxury, elegance, and a pristine social circle. But it wasn't just the decor that caught Isabella's eye. It was the air of perfection that seemed to hang over everything Mia did. Isabella had always admired her best friend's life from afar, especially from her own perch in Seoul, working for one of Korea's most prestigious fashion houses. Mia's glamorous life seemed like the stuff of dreams, a far cry from the ordinary one Isabella had carved for herself. The two friends hadn't spoken much since graduation, their lives taking different paths, but the reunion felt seamless. There was no awkwardness, no distance between them. Just like old times, they slipped into easy conversation, talking about the highs and lows of their respective lives. "So, how's Sang-Jun?" Isabella asked, her voice warm and genuine. Mia smiled, but there was something guarded in her expression, something Isabella couldn't quite place. "He's good, really busy with work. You know how it is." Isabella nodded, a knowing smile on her lips. She had heard all about Sang-Jun's successful ventures, his name always mentioned in whispers of admiration. He was a man who commanded attention, who was always on the move, always closing deals and securing his place in the elite circles. But for all the admiration Mia's husband received, Isabella knew nothing about the man behind the polished exterior. Nothing about the man who, according to Mia, had it all together. They shared a laugh about old times, about high school crushes and the wild days of college, but there was an undercurrent to their conversation, a subtle tension that Isabella couldn't shake. Every time she mentioned something about her own success, Mia seemed to withdraw just a little, as if she were retreating into herself. As the conversation shifted, Isabella couldn't help but notice how Mia kept adjusting her position on the couch, crossing and uncrossing her legs, as if trying to find comfort in her own skin. Her movements were sharp, too calculated, like someone trying to maintain control over something that was just out of reach. Mia's hand reached up to push her hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture that Isabella knew too well. She had seen it countless times over the years, whenever Mia was hiding something. "Is everything okay, Mia?" Isabella's voice softened, her concern growing. "You seem different." Mia froze for a moment, her eyes flicking to the side, and then quickly back to Isabella. "I'm fine," she said, her smile a little too bright. "Just tired, I guess. You know how it is. Always juggling things." Isabella wasn't convinced. She studied Mia for a moment, searching her friend's eyes for any sign of the truth. They had always been close, the kind of friends who could read each other without words. But today, there was something hiding behind Mia's eyes, something Isabella hadn't seen before. Before she could ask again, the door opened with a soft click, and Sang-Jun walked in, his presence immediately commanding the room. He was tall, sharply dressed, exuding an air of quiet confidence that immediately demanded respect. He greeted Isabella with a polite nod, but his eyes never lingered. His attention was always on Mia, and it was clear he was in charge. "Everything okay, babe?" he asked, his tone smooth, too smooth. Mia smiled, standing quickly to greet him. "Of course, just catching up with Isabella." Sang-Jun leaned in, pressing a quick kiss to Mia's cheek before pulling back. "You look beautiful as always." Isabella watched the exchange closely, noticing the stiffness in Mia's body as she responded. Her words light and measured, as if trying to keep the conversation casual. The way she quickly adjusted her posture, making sure to smile just right. It all felt rehearsed, like she was playing a role she could never break free from. Sang-Jun's eyes shifted to Isabella, and for the briefest moment, Isabella caught a flash of something cold in his gaze. It was as if he was sizing her up, making sure she knew her place. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a charming smile. "Well, I'll leave you two to talk," he said, his voice smooth and authoritative. "Dinner's almost ready." He turned to leave, but not before casting one last glance at Mia. It was fleeting, but there was something in that look, something possessive, something that made Isabella's stomach twist. Once he was out of the room, the air in the room felt heavier. Mia exhaled slowly, as though holding her breath for too long, then sank back onto the couch. The tightness in her shoulders was obvious now, and the illusion of calmness was slipping away. Isabella's heart raced as she watched her friend, the woman she had always admired and looked up to, now sitting before her as a stranger. She knew Mia too well. The facade Mia wore was crumbling, and Isabella couldn't help but wonder what was really going on behind the closed doors of that perfect life. The quiet hum of the city outside was the only sound that filled the spacious living room. But inside Mia's home, the air felt suffocating, heavy with tension. It was late, well past midnight, and the house, usually so pristine, now felt like a cage. Mia stood in front of the full-length mirror in the hallway, her eyes tracing the bruise on her cheek, barely visible beneath the layers of makeup. The small cut on her lip had begun to heal, but the sting in her heart was still raw. She had hoped, no, prayed, that things would go differently tonight. That Sang-Jun would be his usual charming self, kind and attentive, like he had been in front of Isabella earlier. But behind closed doors, there was no charm. There was only the cold, calculating anger that had become so familiar to Mia over the years. She felt the familiar lump in her throat, the one that formed every time she tried to hold back tears. The fear, the dread, it was all consuming. Mia took a deep breath, but it felt useless. It had started with something so simple, a visit from her best friend, Isabella. It had been years since they had shared a space, and Mia had invited Isabella over, hoping it would be a chance to reconnect. She had told herself that things would be different this time, that she would be able to talk to Isabella about what was really going on, the truth about Sang-Jun, and the pain she had endured. But as soon as Isabella left, the storm had come. Sang-Jun had come home late from a meeting, his eyes immediately narrowing when he saw Mia still awake. "You brought her here, didn't you?" His voice was low, calm, but there was an edge to it that Mia had learned to fear. Mia tried to explain herself, her voice trembling. "She's my friend, Sang-Jun. You've met her before. We just wanted to catch up." Before she could finish, Sang-Jun's hand shot out, grabbing her by the wrist and pulling her toward him with a force that made her gasp. His grip was like iron, unyielding, crushing her. "You think you can just bring people into this house without consulting me first?" His voice was cold now, a warning she had heard too many times before. Mia winced, trying to pull her arm free, but his hand tightened. The pain was sharp, and she felt the familiar panic begin to rise in her chest. "Sang-Jun, please let go. You're hurting me." Her voice cracked, but she could barely get the words out before he slammed her back against the wall with such force that the pictures on the mantel shook. His face was inches from hers, his breath hot against her skin. "I told you not to trust anyone, Mia. You think she cares about you? She's just waiting for her turn to take what's mine." Mia swallowed hard, her heart racing. "Enu, Sang-Jun. She's just my friend. You're overreacting." His laugh was sharp, devoid of humor. "I'm overreacting. You don't know anything, Mia. You think you can play your little games while I'm busy building an empire." He shoved her again, this time against the edge of the coffee table, and Mia cried out in pain as her ribs collided with the sharp corner. Her breath was shallow, a wave of nausea rising in her throat as she stumbled backward. "Please, I didn't mean any harm." His eyes flashed with anger, and before Mia could react, he backhanded her across the face, the sound of his slap echoing through the room. The sting was immediate, and for a split second, everything went quiet. Mia's eyes blurred with tears, and she stumbled, her hand reaching for the wall to steady herself. "You will never bring anyone into this house again? Do you understand?" His voice was deadly calm, his eyes cold with menace. Mia didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she nodded, her hands trembling at her sides. She wanted to scream, to run, to fight back, but her body betrayed her, frozen in place by the fear that gripped her like a vice. Sang-Jun studied her for a moment, as though waiting for her to break, before his expression softened, just slightly. He stepped forward, his tone now sugar-sweet, like nothing had just happened. "It's okay, Mia. You know I love you, right? I'm just trying to protect you. You're mine, and you need to remember that." Mia's head swam, the bruises on her body beginning to throb, but she didn't dare to respond. She was too afraid to speak, too afraid to even breathe too loudly. Instead, she nodded, a small, barely perceptible movement, knowing that if she said the wrong thing, it would only make things worse. The thought of him getting more violent, the thought of him breaking her beyond repair, was too much to bear.
Sang-Jun smiled, satisfied with her silence.
He leaned in, brushing his lips against her forehead, and Mia closed her eyes, wishing for the moment to end. "Good girl," he whispered. The door slammed shut behind him as he left the room, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Mia collapsed onto the floor, her back against the wall, her body trembling with a mix of fear, anger, and sorrow. She touched her cheek, feeling the bruise already beginning to form beneath her skin. But the pain wasn't just physical. It never was. It was the crushing weight of living in a gilded cage. Isabella had no idea, and Mia wasn't sure how much longer she could keep hiding the truth from her. But no matter what, she couldn't let anyone see the truth. Not yet. Not until she figured out how to escape the life that had turned into a nightmare. Mia had never felt so alone. Not even when she had first moved into the house with Sang-Jun. The walls of the mansion, which once felt like a symbol of their success, now felt suffocating, like they were closing in on her. It had been a week since the last incident, but the bruises on her arms and the ache in her chest hadn't faded. The sting of the slap, the roughness of his hands, they were still fresh in her mind, as vivid as the first day it happened. The house was eerily quiet as Mia moved through the halls, avoiding the mirrors, avoiding the truth staring back at her. She couldn't bear to see her reflection, couldn't bear the guilt and shame that would flood her when she saw the marks left by the man who claimed to love her. It had all happened so fast. The day he came home late from his meeting, Mia had been waiting for him in the living room, trying to act as if everything was normal. She had tried, as always, to play the role of the perfect wife, to be the woman Sang-Jun expected her to be. But when he walked in, his eyes darkened with something Mia knew all too well: anger, frustration, and jealousy. "Why were you out so late today, Mia?" His voice was eerily calm, but there was an edge to it that made her stomach drop. I had a late lunch with some clients," she said quickly, trying to deflect. "Really?" Sang-Jun's voice was laced with skepticism, his eyes narrowing. "You've been gone for hours. Who else were you with?" Mia hesitated, feeling her pulse quicken. She had learned to lie, to hide the truth for fear of his reaction. "It was just business, Sang-Jun. Please, I don't want to argue." But he wasn't listening. His eyes were already scanning the room, taking in everything with that calculating look she had come to dread. Without warning, he grabbed her by the wrist and yanked her toward him, his grip tight and possessive. "You think you can lie to me? You think I won't find out the truth?" His voice was low, dangerously so. Mia could barely breathe under his grip, but she didn't dare speak. She had learned long ago that speaking out, defending herself, only made things worse. He was the one in control, always. His hand tightened around her wrist, making her wince in pain. And then the music started. Loud. So loud that it drowned out the sound of her own heartbeat, the pounding in her ears. He knew the neighbors could hear everything if the volume wasn't turned up. Sang-Jun had always been meticulous about keeping his cruelty a secret from the outside world. He turned the music up even louder, his eyes cold as he led her into the bedroom. She had no choice but to follow, her heart racing, her body trembling with fear. Once inside the room, he shoved her down onto the bed, and the world became a blur of violent hands and harsh words. He punched her in the stomach when she tried to defend herself, sending a sharp pain through her body. His breath was heavy, his voice a twisted mixture of anger and contempt. "You think you can hide from me? You think you can escape?" His words were like daggers, each one slicing through her will to fight. Mia gasped for air, the pain blurring her vision, her body pinned beneath him. It didn't matter what she said. It didn't matter how hard she tried to push him away. He was stronger, more forceful, and she was nothing more than a doll in his hands. When it was over, when the silence finally returned, Mia could barely move. She lay there, her body aching, her mind numb. He had left her there, like he always did, discarded and broken. And then, just like before, he returned home from work the next day with a gift. It was a beautiful necklace, gold and studded with diamonds, the kind of thing Mia used to admire in the store windows before she met him. He handed it to her, and though she wanted to reject it, to throw it back in his face, she knew better. "You're not angry anymore, are you?" Sang-Jun's voice was sickly sweet, the manipulation evident in his tone. "I love you, Mia. Don't forget that." Mia forced a smile, taking the gift from his hand. The tears burned behind her eyes, but she swallowed them down.
Thank you, Sang-Jun.
"I love it." And she did love it. Loved it because it was the only way he knew how to apologize, through gifts and empty promises, through superficial gestures that meant nothing compared to the damage he had caused. But Mia was numb to it now. The gifts didn't make the pain go away. The money, the jewels, the expensive dinners. They didn't erase the bruises he left on her soul. They didn't heal the emotional wounds he had inflicted. The cycle had become all too familiar. The violence, the apologies, the gifts, over and over again. She couldn't break free. She tried to go on as if everything was fine. She plastered on her mask and carried on with her days, hiding the truth from everyone around her. Especially Isabella. She couldn't tell her best friend the truth. She couldn't burden her with the horror of it all. But the pain was too much. The weight of it was crushing her. Mia was drowning, suffocating under the control Sang-Jun had over her. It wasn't until Isabella called her that evening, her voice full of warmth and concern, that Mia felt the cracks in her mask begin to show. "Are you sure you're okay, Mia?" Isabella asked, her tone gentle. "You sound different." Mia hesitated, her throat tightening as she fought back the tears. For a moment, she considered telling Isabella everything, telling her about the bruises, the isolation, the fear that controlled her every move. But before she could speak, she heard the sound of Sang-Jun's voice in the background, calling her name from across the house. She froze, the fear creeping up her spine like ice. "I'm fine, Isabella," Mia lied, her voice wavering. "Really? I'll talk to you soon." She ended the call quickly, her hands shaking as she set the phone down. But Isabella's words lingered in her mind. "Are you sure you're okay?" The seed of doubt had been planted. The crisp morning air in Mia's neighborhood carried a quiet serenity, the kind that made everything seem ordinary. But for Isabella, who had decided to take a weekend trip to visit Mia again, the peaceful streets felt tense, almost oppressive. She had been curious about Mia's recent behavior, the distracted smiles, the nervous gestures, the subtle bruises she couldn't quite ignore during their last video call. Something didn't add up. While walking past the row of townhouses near Mia's, Isabella struck up a conversation with Mrs. Kim, an elderly neighbor she hadn't met before. What started as polite small talk quickly shifted when Mrs. Kim mentioned something that made Isabella freeze. "Oh dear, I do worry about that young lady next door," Mrs. Kim said, shaking her head. "I've seen her husband, he's not gentle. The other night the music was blasting, and there was a lot of shouting. Poor thing looked terrified." Isabella's heart skipped. "Shouting? What do you mean?" Mrs. Kim lowered her voice, glancing around nervously. "I didn't want to interfere, but I saw him shove her, and then there was crying. She always comes out looking so polished, but I can tell she's hiding bruises sometimes. The things he does behind closed doors." Her voice trailed off, leaving the implications heavy in the air. Isabella felt her blood run cold. The world she had admired, Mia's perfect marriage, the luxurious home, the charming husband, was nothing but a facade. Her best friend had been trapped in a nightmare for years, and Isabella had been blissfully unaware. Rage and guilt surged through her. How had she not noticed sooner? How could anyone treat Mia this way? Determined to uncover the truth, Isabella hurried to Mia's home. The door opened, and Mia greeted her with the usual forced smile. But Isabella could see the tension in her posture immediately. "Mia, we need to talk," Isabella said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Mia's face paled, a flicker of fear crossing her eyes.
I'm fine, Isabella.
Really? But Isabella wasn't convinced. She had seen through the mask. She reached for Mia's hands.
No, Mia.
"Something's wrong. I know. I talked to Mrs. Kim."
Mia esse breticht.
Her eyes darted away, but the walls she had built around her heart were crumbling. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want anyone to know. Sang-Jun, he's... Her voice broke. Isabella knelt beside her, gripping her hands tightly. "Tell me, Mia, please. You can trust me." The floodgates opened. Mia's voice trembled as she recounted everything. The manipulation, the isolation, the physical beatings. How Sang-Jun would turn violent in ways no one could suspect. How he would play the charming, perfect husband in public while terrorizing her in private. How he used gifts to cover up the abuse, making her doubt her own reality. Every word dripped with pain, shame, and the fear that had haunted her for years. Isabella's heart ached, fury bubbling beneath the surface. The betrayal Mia had endured, not just from Sang-Jun, but from the world that never saw it, was staggering. She pulled Mia into a hug, holding her tightly. "You don't have to go through this alone anymore. I won't let him hurt you again." Tears streamed down Mia's face as she clung to Isabella, the weight of years of silence and fear finally lifting, if only slightly. "I don't know if I can, if it's even possible to escape him. He controls everything." "You can," Isabella said firmly, her voice steady and unwavering. "And I'll help you, no matter what it takes. We'll figure this out together." For the first time in years, Mia felt a spark of hope. The nightmare that had controlled her life was not insurmountable, not if Isabella was by her side. And as they sat there, side by side, a plan slowly began to form in their minds, born of desperation, loyalty, and the need for survival. This was the turning point, the moment when friendship became a lifeline, and the path toward freedom, however dangerous, began. The dim light of Mia's study flickered against the walls, casting long shadows that seemed to dance in rhythm with the anxiety in Mia's chest. Papers were scattered across the mahogany desk. Bills, letters, reminders of the life she was trapped in. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, the focus was singular, a plan to escape Sang-Jun. Isabella leaned against the edge of the desk, her arms crossed, her gaze sharp. "We have to start thinking about this seriously, Mia. There's no more time to wait." Mia's fingers trembled as she sipped her tea, trying to steady her racing heart. I don't know if I can, I say. He's dangerous. He'll ruin me, my life, my reputation. Everyone will think I'm weak." Isabella shook her head. "You're not weak. He's been controlling you, manipulating you for years. That's not weakness, that's survival. But survival isn't enough anymore. You deserve freedom, Mia. You deserve to breathe without fear." Mia's eyes dropped to the floor. "It's not that simple.
Sang-Jun, he is everywhere.
People respect him. They trust him. No one will believe me if I try to leave. And what if he..." Her voice faltered. "Then we make them see the truth," Isabella interrupted firmly. "But we can't do that if you stay silent. You have to take the first step. No one can do it for you." The words struck Mia like a shockwave. She wanted to believe them. She truly did. But Sang-Jun's psychological grip was suffocating. She had been groomed to believe that the world outside was dangerous, that no one could protect her the way he could, even as he hurt her. He had twisted her reality so subtly, so methodically, that she often doubted her own instincts. Every time I try to think about leaving, I see him. I hear his voice telling me no one will help, that I'll lose everything, that I'm nothing without him, Mia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Isabella stepped closer, gripping her shoulders. And you're wrong. You're not nothing. You're Mia, my best friend. A woman strong enough to survive this. And I'm not letting him dictate your life anymore. Mia's tears welled up, the weight of years pressing down on her. She thought of the night Sang-Jun had beaten her while cranking the music to cover the sounds. The sting of his hands, the fear that had consumed her for so long. She remembered the way he would return with gifts. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, luxurious dinners, as if to erase the pain he had inflicted. Each gift had been a cruel reminder of his control, a twisted way of keeping her dependent and unsure of herself. Okay, she finally whispered, her voice trembling. Okay, I'll do it. But we need a plan. Something foolproof. Something that guarantees we. Her words faltered, the fear still choking her. Foolproof. Isabella's eyes narrowed. There's no such thing. But smart, careful, calculated. We plan this right, Mia, and you walk out of that house a free woman. That's what matters. No hesitation, no doubt. We watch, we wait, and then we act. Mia nodded slowly, the first flicker of resolve lighting in her eyes. He's twisted my mind for so long. I don't even know what's real anymore. That's exactly why you need me, Isabella said. I see it clearly, and together we'll fix it. The two women sat in silence for a moment, each absorbed in the enormity of what they were about to do. The plan had to account for Sang-Jun's influence, his cunning, his network, and his reputation. They would need resources, careful timing, and nerves of steel. One wrong move, and it wouldn't just be Mia's life at risk. It could be both of theirs. Mia's hands clenched into fists.
I'm scared.
You should be, Isabella admitted. But fear doesn't stop us. It fuels us. We use it. And soon, Mia, you won't have to live like this anymore. For the first time in years, Mia allowed herself to imagine a life without fear, without bruises, without the constant manipulation. A life where she could make her own choices, walk freely, and breathe deeply. And in that fragile, trembling hope, the blueprint for their escape began to take shape. A dangerous, daring plan that would test every ounce of courage they had. The night was heavy with humidity, the kind that clung to the skin and made every movement feel slow and deliberate. Inside Mia's house, the air was thick with tension. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant hum of traffic outside, felt amplified. Tonight, the plan they had been crafting for weeks was about to move from whispered discussions into action, but the stakes had never felt higher. Isabella paced the study, reviewing notes they had made. Sang-Jun's routines, his habits, the hours he left the house for meetings, the neighbors' schedules, the security cameras they had mapped out. We have a narrow window, she whispered, more to herself than to Mia. Everything has to line up perfectly, or this all fails. Mia sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles were white. Her body still ached from the previous night's beatings, the bruises forming dark shadows beneath her clothes. Every fiber of her being screamed that she should run, hide, abandon the plan, but she couldn't. Not anymore. I can't believe we're really doing this, Mia said, her voice trembling. If he catches us, I don't even want to think about what he'll do. You can't think about that, Isabella said firmly. You have to focus. This is about getting you out. Every second he suspects anything, every glance he throws your way is a risk. But we can't stop now. The memories of Sang-Jun's abuse flooded Mia's mind. How he had beaten her while cranking the music so neighbors wouldn't hear. How he would return the next day with gifts, playing the perfect husband to erase the evidence of terror he inflicted. Each memory ignited a mixture of fear and fury within her. That fear had controlled her life for too long. Fury would fuel her now. The plan required a calculated distraction. Isabella would call Sang-Jun under the pretense of a meeting opportunity in another city, drawing him out while Mia gathered her essentials and slipped out. But even as Isabella rehearsed the steps, Mia could feel the weight of the danger pressing down. Suddenly, a sound from upstairs, the unmistakable click of the front door, froze them both. Sang-Jun was home earlier than expected.
Mia's chest tightened.
She could feel her pulse hammering in her ears. He He wasn't supposed to. Isabella grabbed her hand. Stay calm. We adapt. Don't let him see your fear. Sang-Jun's voice drifted down the hallway, smooth and unnervingly calm. Mia, I thought you'd be ready for dinner. Mia swallowed hard, nodding silently. Her body tensed as he entered the room, his eyes scanning her with a calculated coldness. He noticed her clasped hands, the faint quiver in her voice, the way her gaze flitted nervously. You're hiding something, he said, a dangerous smile curling his lips. Tell me, Mia, what are you planning? The words hung in the air, like a guillotine poised above her. Mia felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to speak, to deny, to plead, but she knew he wouldn't believe her lies. His manipulation had trained her to fear her own words. Isabella stepped forward subtly, keeping her tone casual but firm. He's imagining things, Sang-Jun. Just tired, that's all. Sang-Jun's gaze flicked to Isabella, narrowing as though sizing her up. He didn't speak, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Every muscle in Mia's body screamed at her to flee, yet she stayed rooted to the spot, controlled by fear and desperation. Finally, after what felt like hours, Sang-Jun left the room, muttering something about going to check his emails. The moment the sound of his footsteps faded, Mia exhaled shakily, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. We can't wait any longer, Isabella whispered. He's suspicious. Tonight, Mia, we do this. No more hesitation. Mia nodded, her hands trembling, but her eyes burning with resolve. I'm ready. I can't live like this anymore. The night stretched ahead of them, fraught with risk, danger, and uncertainty. Every step, every breath, every sound had to be precise. They were crossing a line, one that, once crossed, could never be undone. And in that tense, quiet house, two best friends prepared to defy a man who had controlled and terrorized for years, knowing that freedom would come at a price, but also knowing that the cost of staying would be far greater. The house was eerily silent, the kind of silence that feels too loud. The walls, once full of tension and unease, now felt hollow, empty, vacant of the power and control Sang-Jun had once imposed upon them. Mia stood in the middle of the living room, her hand gripping the back of a chair, her knuckles white. The adrenaline from their escape had worn off, leaving only a deep exhaustion behind. She stared at the door, half expecting Sang-Jun to come through at any moment, his voice cutting through the silence with accusations and demands. But he didn't. He was gone. For the first time in years, Mia was free. The weight of his presence no longer loomed over her. The fear, the terror, the constant worry, it was all gone. But as the night stretched on, the liberation felt heavy, not as she'd imagined it. A sense of guilt washed over her, unbidden and relentless. The consequences of their decision, the one they had taken together, began to sink in. Isabella, who had been by her side through the planning and the execution, watched her now with a quiet, knowing look. She could see the cracks in Mia's facade, the rawness of the fear and relief that mixed within her. Mia, talk to me, Isabella said softly, her voice laced with concern. I know this is a lot. You don't have to hide it. Mia took a deep breath, the weight of the last few hours pressing on her chest like a vice. I never thought I'd feel like this. I thought I'd feel relief, but all I feel is... She paused, struggling to find the right words. Guilt, shame, like we've gone too far. Isabella stepped closer, her expression gentle but firm. You didn't have a choice, Mia. He was never going to change. You were suffocating in that marriage, and the world you built with him was a lie. You did what you had to do to survive. I know, Mia whispered, her voice cracking. But what if it wasn't the right thing? What if I'm wrong? What if the law comes after us? What if they find out? Mia, Isabella said softly, but with conviction, you don't get to carry that burden alone. We did this, together, and you're not going to face the consequences of this alone either. We'll face them as friends, no matter what. Mia turned away, pacing across the room, her thoughts a whirlwind. The reality of what they had done was settling in, and it felt as though her entire life had shifted. The man who had controlled her, broken her down piece by piece, was gone. And with his disappearance came a new world, one she had never truly known. She was no longer bound to fear him, but she was bound to the weight of her own decisions. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she said quietly, staring at the window, her voice distant. "I just wanted him to leave me alone. I wanted him to stop hurting me. But now I've taken everything from him." Isabella crossed the room, standing beside her. "You didn't take anything. You freed yourself. You freed both of us." Mia turned to face her, tears welling in her eyes. "But it's not that simple. I took a life, Isa. He might have been a monster, but I still—" Isabella placed a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't take his life. His choices took his life. You acted out of desperation, out of survival. There's a difference." Mia's breath hitched as she nodded, the sobs coming unbidden now. "I don't know if I can live with this, Isa. The guilt feels like it's suffocating me." Isabella's expression softened, and she pulled Mia into an embrace. "It will get better. In time. Right now, we have to think about what comes next. We need to stay strong, stay smart. We'll lay low, keep the story straight. We're not alone in this." Mia clung to her, feeling a strange mix of terror and gratitude. "But what if we get caught? What if he comes back?" Isabella pulled back slightly to look her in the eyes. "He won't. The damage is done. We've covered our tracks. We've been careful." Mia nodded again, but the weight still pressed on her. There was no denying that their actions would have consequences, but she had already crossed a line that, once crossed, could never be undone. The next few weeks passed in a blur of tension and uncertainty. They lay low, keeping to themselves and ensuring that their story was consistent. Isabella helped Mia adjust to her new life, guiding her through the steps of re-establishing her identity without Sang-Jun. She filed for a divorce, changed her address, and even started therapy to begin processing the trauma that had controlled her life for so long. But the legal repercussions of their decision were far from over. Days turned into weeks, and despite their best efforts to keep the truth buried, the pressure mounted. At the local police station, Sang-Jun's disappearance was quickly becoming the subject of whispers, and the investigation began to take shape. Mia's fear never fully subsided, but with Isabella by her side, she found the strength to keep moving forward. They both knew that their choices would haunt them, but they also knew that they had done what was necessary to survive. Months later, the police investigation faltered. No direct evidence of foul play could be found. Sang-Jun's disappearance remained a mystery. In the end, the case went cold, and Mia and Isabella, though forever changed, were free. Mia's new life was no longer defined by fear and control. She had her independence, her dignity, and most importantly, her freedom. She knew that she would never forget the price of that freedom, but in time she would come to accept it, not as a burden, but as the cost of survival. And though the scars of the past would always remain, Mia had learned that sometimes survival was the only justice she could claim. As she and Isabella sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset, Mia turned to her friend, her eyes finally free of the shadows that had haunted her for so long. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't think I could have done this without you." Isabella smiled softly, her hand resting on Mia's. "You didn't have to do it alone, Mia. And you never will." Together, they sat in silence, the weight of their past heavy but no longer controlling, as the sun dipped below the horizon, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Thanks for watching Folktales by Queen Dora. For more interesting stories, please click on the subscription button.